Today we are going to recreate the Mercury effect using Apple Motion. Also, if you're a patron, you'll be able to download this effect and use it straight within Final Cut Pro. First things first, open up Apple Motion. If you don't get the project browser, you can push Command, Option, and N. Today we are going to select Import as Project and locate the footage that we want to use. I found this shot off of Envato Elements. This video is not sponsored, but I do highly recommend Envato Elements, and there is a 7-day free trial if you want to use the link down below. The first thing we need to do is rotoscope out this car. Now we don't have the fancy roto brush like in After Effects, but it's actually a pretty simple shot to do it on. So the first thing we want to do is select the shape tool, and we're just going to create a rough outline around our car here. And it really doesn't need to be too precise, just a nice rough outline. Now that I've cut out the car, I'm going to go to my inspector and disable the outline so we just have this white shape. Now because the movement is pretty subtle on this, we shouldn't need to track it, but what we can do is go to our geometry settings and find the control points. And I'm just going to click to add a keyframe on our very first frame of the project. From there, I'm going to go ahead and hide the Bezier mask, move to the very end of the project, and then we're going to select one point and then push Command A to select all of the points and just click and drag this roughly into place. And again, this doesn't have to be super accurate, just a rough estimate of where things are. And if we move backward, we should see that we have a pretty rough cutout of the car. We could even go into the middle and maybe add some extra keyframes just by adjusting these control points so that we have a nice little roto of the car. Now that we've done that, right click and select New Group, and we're going to rename this group to be Mercury. Then from there, we're going to select our yellow sports car and push K to create a clone layer. Now the clone layer allows us to apply any effects we want to the original layer, like coloring or something like that, and the clone layer will also receive those attributes. But we can also apply individual effects directly to the clone layer without affecting the main layer. With this clone layer selected, go ahead and drag it into the Mercury layer. We will also click and drag our Bezier layer into the Mercury layer, just like so. Right clicking on our clone layer, we can select Add Image Mask, and then we are going to drag this Bezier shape into the well. So now this Bezier shape is actually masking out wherever our car is. So if I disable this underlying layer, we can see that the car is nicely cut out. Now I notice that some of these edges are a little bit sharp, and I'm not a big fan of that. So let's go up into our Bezier shape and drag up the roundness just a little bit to smooth out some of those rough edges. After we've done that, we can go ahead and re-enable the underlying layer. Now that we have our Mercury layer, select it and go up to Filters, go down to Distortion, and we're going to select Bump Map. We need something to actually drive this bump map effect before we can see it. So to best replicate the Mercury effect, we're going to go to our library, locate Generators, and find the Clouds layer. I'm going to right click and actually create a new group. We'll call it Distortion. And from there, we will click and drag our clouds layer into the distortion layer. Now, the way the bump map works is according to how bright or dark a part of the image is how much it will be distorted. With our cloud selected, go to the inspector and make sure you're in the generator properties. In here, you can adjust stuff like the scale and vertical scale. We'll mess with those a little bit later. But the really key important one is to find this offset parameter. Click this down arrow and find the Y parameter. Then we'll click this down arrow, add a parameter behavior, and we're going to select rate. The rate parameter is going to consistently add a given value onto our selected parameter so that we can give it the illusion of this cloud effect moving upwards. In our rate parameter settings, we're going to type in 0.1. And if we push play, we can now see that the clouds are slowly moving upwards. Now that we've done that, we can actually disable the cloud settings just so we can get a look at our Mercury effect. Selecting the bump map, we can click and drag the clouds into our bump map image. And now you can see that the car is actually kind of warping, which is kind of a cool effect in and of itself, but it's not going in the correct direction. So we need to adjust the amount settings first and then adjust which direction they are going so that they're moving vertically. So now we have the Mercury effect going upwards, but we still need a layer that's actually masking out this Mercury effect. Let's select our Mercury layer and push Command D to duplicate it. We'll go ahead and delete the bump map, and now we should have a rough cutout of our car in front of the Mercury effect. However, you'll notice that here at the bumper, my mask wasn't very good. Now we could go in and really finely tune that rotoscope, but I'm really lazy, so I'm gonna use this other method. Let's go ahead and rename this original layer to be foreground. Then we'll push Command D to duplicate it again. And this time we're gonna call it foreground key. Then we can go up to our filters, go down to keying and select keyer. From there, we can actually delete the image mask. So now the keyer is working just on our car. Then with the keyer selected, we can select the sample color and make sure we just get a big wide sample of the car on the side. If I were to disable the foreground layer, this actually creates a really cool effect where the Mercury effect is happening just where the car is. Take with that what you will. I think it's a cool looking effect. You can use it in your videos, but that is not the effect that we are going for. So I'm gonna go ahead and re-enable the foreground. And with our keyer selected, we are going to select invert. Now you'll see that that has made the car white. So what we need to do is click and drag the spill level down to 0. And just like that, we have a great cutout of our car. Our windows are actually being cut out, which is what we want. We want that Mercury effect to be behind those windows, and it's all tracked to where the car is. This is where you can start to have a lot of fun with the effects. We can jump into the cloud settings and actually adjust the scale of the Mercury effect. So if you want it a little bit larger, you can do that. We could adjust the speed so it's warping a little bit more. We could go into our bump map settings and adjust the amount, so we could drag it way up if we wanted to. And something else you can also do is actually take this amount slider, set it to 0, click to add a keyframe and move forward in time, and then set this up to something like 1. And so now it's going to slowly animate into place. If we go to the right side and find our keyframe editor, we can select both keyframes, right click, interpolation, and select exponential. So now if we push play, that effect is slowly going to build up until the end frame there, which looks really cool. And I would definitely use this if I was applying this to music. You could also apply it with a speed ramp in Final Cut Pro, and I think it would look really, really good. But one final thing you might want to play around with is selecting the Mercury layer. We could go up to filters and go down to stylize, and in here there are a ton of different stylization effects that you can play around with. One that I really like is the crystallize effect. And in here we can adjust the speed on the crystallize effect so that it's kind of warping. And now we've got this really cool Mercury effect with these kind of crystals coming off the top. And I happen to think that this is really unique compared to some of the other Mercury effects, so that your videos can actually stand out from amongst the rest. If you are a patron, I have a version of this effect. It's gonna have a whole bunch of customization options that you can use to get this effect looking just right in Final Cut Pro. So if this video was helpful to you, you really might want to consider checking out this video where I show how to create a portal effect using Apple Motion. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.